All right, man. Let's do
Mhm.
this. Last two main bouts. I'm just thinking about it. All right, I'm gonna throw this
One's
number.
hard, one's hard, one is easy. So
Yeah. All right, man. Let's start with the hard one. I'm gonna throw two numbers out at you. Shane Carwin plus 125. Frank Mir minus 155. Interesting. So Frank Mir's
uh
the favorite, a slight favorite. I actually thought he would be a huge favorite coming in. Not GSP minus 800 huge, but I thought he would be at least 2-1 favorite.
why?
Just because of the resume. I don't want to take anything from Shane Carwin. I think obviously, as a person, he's a great guy, great ambassador for the sport. 11-0 record speaks for itself. All finishes, but I just don't think, his most decorated win was his last, Gabriel Gonzaga, impressive TKO. But I mean, look at Frank Mir. Frank Mir sporting
Well,
13-4, two-time champion. I Frank Mir added a lot of pounds lately. The right poundage, so he's added bulk muscle. In anticipation for his another rematch, I guess, with Lesnar. That's kind of where I saw when I first saw the line, I was shocked.
that doesn't surprise me that the line isn't that lopsided. Again, I'm not. And you start throwing out numbers on like minus this. I'm probably as ignorant as they come. But I do not. I think this is a very difficult fight to call. And actually, I'm going with Carwin in this fight. I think this is a very tough fight. I think Frank, for all his talent, he can be up and down. I think the maturity factor is going to be big, and I think that edge goes Carwin. I think that Carwin physically is a beast. Physically is a beast, and Frank is bigger. I don't know if that muscle will translate into pushing Carwin around. I don't see it, but I do believe Frank's. Here's the thing. I think that where Frank's advantages are is his improved boxing. He's definitely very comfortable throwing his hands and moving his head. He does a very good job. He sits well on his punch, sits down very well on his punches now. We know about his jiu-jitsu. I don't think any heavyweight has the jiu-jitsu skills that Frank Mir has. Carwin, obviously a very, very powerful guy, very good wrestler. Is going to be comfortable on the ground against Mir. He's not going to be making mistakes against Mir on the ground. I can see him controlling Mir on the ground if he gets if it gets down there. I think he's the more powerful guy. I just think that Shane Carwin can make mistakes because of his powerful hands. His hands are abnormally huge and they're very powerful. And I think he can make a mistake and hurt Frank. Frank can't make a mistake and hurt against Carwin. Because if he makes a mistake and drops his hands at any point and they're both coming in, Carwin is likely to knock Frank down and hurt Frank more so than Frank is, hurt Carwin. Now Carwin can be hurt. We saw that against with the Gonzaga. He was hurt. Then he recuperated. So I just think that he can get hurt, but I don't see Frank, hurting him before he hurts Frank. At least not with punches.
I hear. Wow, this is the first fight that we've come across where we have completely opposite perspectives, which is great. That's the best thing about MMA, And as Chris Berman says, that's why they play the game. So
Exactly.
it's
Exactly. It's a
awesome.
tough
Yeah.
one to call though.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah,
And then there's one other factor I do want to throw in, and I know I'm long-winded, but I really want to get this out. What could be a factor is how well Carwin deals with the layoff that he's had. I mean,
yes.
he's been off for a long time now. We're talking about almost a year. It'll be more than a year
Yep.
when he steps into the octagon. So, how well how well he's been able to deal with that layoff. He was supposed to fight Brock Lesnar. That was off. He was supposed to fight Cain Velasquez. That that fell through. So he's had all these fights, made. He's had full training camps for those fights.
Yeah.
And then had to back off. So now he's had this full training camp, his third in a row, and he's finally getting the fight. And how well he deals with it, will really could determine the outcome.
an awesome perspective to think. I didn't even look at that. Yeah, for you that don't know, just like me, last time he fought was UFC 96. It was in March of
Yeah.
2009 when he TKO'd Gonzaga. So it has been a while. Same thing with GSP. I know GSP fought at 100 at July, so it's not as long of a layoff as Carwin has had. So great point by Franklin there. So we got Franklin. Let's call this one.
I'm going with Carwin. I think Carwin. I'm going to pick Carwin by decision. Um, yeah, I'm going to go with Carwin in this. I just think that and I don't, Frank can also win it. So I'm going to play it safe and go with his decision. But I would not be surprised if it ends early. Here's the thing: if this fight ends early, I believe it'll be Carwin knocking out Frank Mir. Even though Frank showed tremendous punching power against Czech Congo in his most recent fight. Congo has good striking ability, but he's not the stand. He hasn't had the best stand-up defense, and he's vulnerable. So, and Frank's boxing is at another level right now. And again, Frank could hurt with his boxing skills. He could hurt Carwin as well. But I just think Carwin's power is just otherworldly. I just think it's almost inhuman.
Yeah, I'm extremely anxious to see how Mir comes out. He's been hyping himself up more than anything, so hopefully he backs it up with some pudding.
And he's got to make sure that he's not so focused. And again, and I talked about maturity earlier. Frank, when he's focused on something, he tends to be very focused on it. And there's no question his focus is on a trilogy, a rubber match with Brock Lesnar. And I know he's saying all the right things. He's not looking past Carwin. That Carwin is probably a bigger threat than Brock. But I know Frank, and I know Frank is very, when he gets on in that that tunnel, he gets tunnel vision. He's like so focused on Brock. You just wonder, how committed he is to this fight. And that could, I'm sure he's a pro and he's going to, do all the right things. But you just wonder. At least I do.
On a side note, I'd like to ask you: do you think Frank Mir's hatred, I guess you could call it hatred for Brock Lesnar, do you think it's more that Lesnar came from the industry and the background that he came from, and he's coming into, I guess, Mir's, love, his passion, his life, and he's all of a sudden just taking it over, and Mir kind of looks at it as a slap in the face? Or do you think he just doesn't like Brock Lesnar as a person?
No, he just doesn't like Brock Lesnar. I think they both have exchanged some things, words. I think Frank Mir definitely respects Brock Lesnar's wrestling background and what he brings in. Brock is an extremely gifted athlete. No one can underestimate that. Brock Lesnar had the opportunity when he got out of college or left the Vikings and things like that, he would have gone to mixed martial arts if he could have made money doing that. He would have never gone to professional wrestling. The opportunity came to him, and the UFC is what it is, and he felt that that's where he can, compete on a professional level. And I think guys respect him. I mean, Brock Lesnar respects the sport. He and Frank Mir have a personal thing, personal issues going on, and that's really what it stems from. There have been some bad things said on both sides, and that's just the nature of it. Brock did come in with a lot of fanfare. There was some jealousy or some envy toward Brock because he was going, one, he was fighting a top-level guy right away, and secondly, he was, when he came into UFC, he fought Frank, that was his first fight, and then he, very shortly thereafter got a title shot. So yeah, there are guys who feel like, hey, I've been in this sport for years and or in the organization for a while, and I haven't gotten my shot, and here this guy just comes in. But that's also business. Brock is good for the UFC, and what's good for the UFC is good for everybody.
Yep.
So.
Absolutely.